Welcome to Tweener Madness, the high-stakes startup showdown where 8 promising companies go head-to-head for a $25,000 investment prize from the Triangle Tweener Fund. But before the competition kicks off, let's meet the people making the tough calls, the judges. In this special Meet the Judges episode, we're sitting down with the investors and industry leaders who will be asking the hard-hitting questions, evaluating the startups, and ultimately deciding who moves forward in this bracket-style competition. Each round, 3 judges will vote on which startups advance, leading up to the finals in early April, where one company will take home the top prize. From the judges, you'll hear about their backgrounds, what they look for in a winning startup, and maybe even get a little inside scoop on their decision-making process. So, if you're a founder looking for investment, an entrepreneur curious about what investors really want, or just someone who loves a good business battle, you are in the right place. Let's meet the judges. Here's your host, Scot Wingo.
Hey everybody, we are today joined by David Jones, affectionately known as DJ, to those of us that have known him for a long time. And then David is a general partner at Bull City Venture Partners. Dave, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Scott. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so you graciously volunteered to be one of our selection committee members for the Tweener Madness. So we're looking forward to spending some time with you in the studio as we get into this contest. Until then, let's let folks know a little bit about you. Where are you from? And then how did you get into this fun world of venture investing?
So let's see, from the coast, from Wilmington, North Carolina originally. Grew up there and then took a little different path in life and went to the Naval Academy for undergrad. And from there, flew planes in the Navy for almost 10 years. And then while I was finishing up in the Navy, I got a master's in computer science. And then from there, got out, did consulting for a couple of years, did my own startup as a founder and CTO, and then went back to business school at UNC and met my now business partner there and got into the venture business.
Good. Give us a fun naval aviator story. Did you see active combat?
Fun. I saw some time in the Bosnia War, if you guys remember that, in 95, 96. The plane I flew is called a P-3 Orion. It's being phased out. That shows you how old I am. But our mission was tracking submarines. We'd go down to 200 feet over the ocean and drop these sonobuoys, basically these microphones that the guys in the back could drop down to different depths, and they could listen to a submarine. So I spent a lot of time in Iceland, Norway, and places like that.
Submarine hunting, interesting. Yeah, my grandfather was a admiral rear admiral in the Navy on submarines. Worked for Nimitz.
Really?
We'll have to have that conversation sometime. I can't believe I haven't had that before.
That's cool. Wow.
Yeah. So your stressful situations aren't as stressful when you've been in some situations like that.
Not quite as stressful.
Yeah. And then walk through the progression. I've known you guys forever, but for folks that don't know, you're on the third fund of Bull City, but then you guys go back to Southern Capital Ventures, right?
Yeah. So getting out of school, I joined Jason as he was starting Southern Capital Fund 1. We had 2 funds under the Southern Capital name. We called Fund 1 and Fund 2. And again, early investor. The first fund was an early investor in Scott's third company, Channel Advisor. And then due to a death and one part-time partner aging out, we started Bull City to kind of change up some of the ownership. And so we are now investing out of Fund 4 of Bull City. Same focus, same strategy, a lot of the same investors. Fairly, a tech VC fund, fairly software generalist across the board. That fund is around $55 million. We're about halfway into that. We just made a new investment 20 days ago. So super actively investing out of that fund.
Very cool. And then for founders that are kind of new to the area and kind of ask, what's your sweet spot? So you've got a $55 million fund, and you guys have done a really good job of kind of growing the fund size, which means the check size grows, which is awesome for the area. So where's kind of like your current sweet spot on check size, company stage, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, Scott, we brand ourselves as kind of seed and Series A. And so I think what that's tend to mean is we don't do as much pre-seed. So if it's 2 or 3 people with an idea. We'll do 1 or 2 of those per fund, but most of it is you have a beta product. Maybe you have at least a customer banging around on it, something like that, a customer or 2, kind of up through, something that's doing 2 or 3 million, 4 million in revenue. So kind of seed and Series A, again, fairly broad across software. Obviously, we're spending a ton of time in AI, and we have some themes in there that we've done a lot of, but I would say very founder focused. I always say 70% of our decision is usually on the founding team and, our opinion of the founding team. So, so check size out of this fund can be, it's probably averages 750 to $1 million. We can write us something a little bit smaller. We've written a $250K check, but I would say the sweet spot is probably 750 to $1.5 million, again, depending on that stage, and then a plan to kind of get 2.5 to 3 million total per company.
Yeah, and then everyone's favorite category is B2B SaaS, so I'm sure you do a lot there. Any other favorite categories? You mentioned AI, and then also any categories you guys don't invest in, like do you do biotech and life science type things?
So let's see, Scott, the things I think we like and we've done a lot of, healthcare software is something we like. Again, we will not do biotech or anything with regulatory, no medical devices, nothing like that. So healthcare software, we've done a decent amount of. Let's see, the enabling e-commerce, which is kind of, a little bit of what Channel Advisor's done. And pure play e-commerce, we've done a handful of pure play e-commerce, and so that's a sector that we like. Cyber, we've done a little bit of. Developer tools, kind of infrastructure software across the layer, is something that we've done a decent amount and like that. So that's again a couple of themes I'll come back to. That the founder will trump the themes, but those are some of the themes I think we've done a lot in.
Got it. Cool. And then what are some of your biggest successes as a firm? And we can go all the way back to SCV if you want. So you've been investing for, you're on your 6th fund, basically, if we count the previous 2. What are some of the big wins in there?
So Channel Advisor, Scott, again, we were super fortunate to be the first institutional investor in Channel Advisor back when it was doing like $50K a month in revenue. That went public. That alone returned our first fund over, don't quote me on this, roughly 2.5 times by itself. So that was a huge winner for our first fund. In our second fund, a company in Washington, D.C. called Wedding Wire returned the second fund. That Wedding Wire has now bought The Knot, and the Wedding Wire team runs The Knot, but it's kind of Yelp for weddings, founders of Blackboard. And so I would say those are probably 2 of the biggest ones. Again, you kind of dream of being able to return the fund on a company, and those are two companies that have returned the fund and some.
Yeah, and you guys recently, this one had like a lot of people in the triangle in it, but Biospatial had an exit, so congrats on that. That was a good outcome.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, that was a really good one. It, didn't raise that much money, and we got an incredible multiple on it. So it was a really good one. Great team.
Some people keep an anti-portfolio, so it's kind of the ones that got away. Anything come to mind there?
Unfortunately, that list is so long, Scott, that we could take up this whole. But I think the ones that really hurt locally, I would say Pendo really hurts. I mean, we've known Todd from the get go. Looked at some of his last companies, and just if you remember at the time, a product person in a company did not have budget. They had no budget to do that, and so kudos to Todd because it developed into that, and we passed on that. That hurt.
Yeah.
The story that I always
tell,
exactly. The story that I always tell, and this guy as well, is in November of 2012, Jason and I were in New York sitting over lunch with a guy who was the president of the Nook at the time. And he was starting a company that was an exercise bike with a little iPad on it. And he's like, hey, I'm kind of doing this on the side. Would you guys be interested in investing in this company? Obviously it was Peloton. And we're like, oh my gosh, why would we invest in an exercise bike with an iPad on it? So that hurt. That hurt.
Yeah. They don't have big ups and then a big down at the end. Sadly. Yeah. So you've probably seen, I don't know how many pitches you've seen. I'm sure it's into the thousands at this point. What's your advice for, and these are going to be pre-seed, kind of like pretty early on kind of ideas, kind of pre-tweener. So there'll be some that have no revenue all the way to some that have some revenue, but certainly not at scale yet. What's your advice for founders on, best tips and maybe even things not to do when you're pitching it at this stage?
I would say, be yourself, be confident, especially at that stage, Scott, looking for you to be some type of expert in what you're doing. I'm always impressed when the founder, again, knows his competitors, knows the competitive set, like better than the competitors even know themselves. So you need to show that the question we're asking is, why is this person qualified to do this? And so again, showing that you're an expert there. And then I guess my recommendation would be, rehearse the pitch a bunch. I think there's no substitute for that. I'm a big fan of that. Simplify the message. Again, that sounds very simple and trite, but I'm amazed at how many companies I come away with, and I'm like, I'm not quite sure I understand what that is. But so keep working on simplify. And then I would say the last thing is, don't feel like you have to answer every single question perfectly. It's okay to say, hey, I need to find out. Hey, let me work on that. Like, we're not expecting you to be the to know everything and admit when you don't know everything. So that's a couple quick things.
Yeah, that's good advice. So we really appreciate you doing this. We'll see you next in the studio live for one of the contests. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see how that goes. Any last words for folks that are thinking about applying to the contest?
No, good luck.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We appreciate you doing this.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott.
DJ.
I appreciate it.
That's a wrap on this Meet the Judges episode. Now you know the minds behind the decisions, the investors and industry leaders who will be putting these startups to the test. As Tweener Madness kicks off, they'll be asking the tough questions, making the tough calls, and deciding who advances in the bracket, all leading up to the finals in early April. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single matchup. And if you want to follow along with all things Tweener Madness and the Triangle startup scene, head on over to tweenertimes.com. Also, if you're thinking about launching your own podcast or want to bring professional production to your brand, check out Earfluence.com. The competition is about to begin, and we'll see you soon in the next episode.